Keep the feed stable. I want to see exactly how they deploy, Commander Halric Dorn said, his voice a calm edge in the control room's compressed air. The officers around him didn't speak. Screens flickered with Council warships crossing orbital lanes, their hulls lit in the reflected glow of Earth's receding night. The Council had come in full strength, closing off Earth from its lifelines in a single, calculated maneuver. Dorn's eyes moved between displays, absorbing the silent choreography of the embargo. A feed from the Moon's relay station cut out, replaced by Council dreadnoughts forcing the evacuation of civilian platforms. He leaned closer, the faint crackle of laser plasma displays mixing with the soft exhalations of the men in the room. "We're done waiting," he said, his tone dry as old steel. The broadcast from Earth's central governance hub arrived as static. Dorn adjusted the signal, catching fragments of the Planetary Council's declaration, frantic voices, words clipped by interference. "We have no choice. Remain calm. Negotiations." Then silence. Cut clean. Dorn let the line die. Negotiations were an illusion now. From the observation deck, the Council's blockade was a ring of cold light. Dozens of dreadnoughts drifted in disciplined rows, turning Earth's orbit into a silent threat. Dorn watched the movements with a stillness that masked the calculations running behind his eyes. He could almost feel the weight of those ships pressing against the planet's air, pushing Earth's governments to their knees without a single shot. "Sir, relay intercept from Mars defense grid," an operator reported. His fingers tapped at the heads-up display, lines of data scrolling with clinical detachment. "Council Marines have secured Deimos Station. Civilian personnel ordered to surrender immediately." Dorn's lips tightened. "In Earth's response?" "Fragmented, sir. Local commands are stalled. Civilians panicking at major hubs." He exhaled once, slow and deliberate. "Show me the orbital lanes around Mars. Full scan." The data changed on the laser plasma display, revealing the Council's formation. A disciplined wedge that left Earth no choice but compliance. Outside the viewport, Earth's orbital station sat in forced darkness. Cargo tethers snapped in frozen arcs as Council boarding pods latched on with iron certainty. Dorn watched one station's emergency lights flicker, red and uneven, painting the Council's symbol across its hull in a glow that seemed almost mocking. The Planetary Council's emergency broadcast returned in stuttering signals. "We urge calm," it repeated, voice choked by static. Dorn's jaw shifted as he listened. He knew calm was a lie. The Council's tactics were not violence. They were an economic noose, tightened in orbit, while Earth's leaders tried to pretend it was still possible to negotiate. He turned to Director Vorn Hallex, Earth's senior communications advisor. The man's skin was pale under the glow of the console's interface. "They're not here to negotiate," Dorn said quietly, each word a deliberate cut. "They're here to watch us falter." Hallex swallowed, gaze dropping to the console. "We're isolated. No external signals, no trade routes, Council enforcement squadrons blocking every relay." "Which means," Dorn replied, turning back to the viewport, "we're done trying to speak. Let them see what we can do in silence." The feed changed again. Council landing craft dropped into Earth's orbital docks, Marines in sealed suits moving with ruthless precision. Civilians were forced into docking bays, their protests muted by Council patrols, whose orders were clear and absolute. Dorn watched the muted movements, the practiced efficiency of an empire that had done this before. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "They believe fear will hold us in place." He glanced at the flickering feeds one last time, then motioned for them to be cut. "Archive this footage, all of it," he ordered. His voice didn't rise, but the command room stilled around him. "I want it logged and secured. We'll need proof of what they did here." An operator hesitated. "Commander, should we reach out to the outer colonies? They're already sending—" "No," Dorn said. "We're cut off. Let them think we're alone. It's better they believe the Council has total control." His tone was unyielding. "Total control forces them to show every card they have. It forces them to reveal the weaknesses in their own game." He stepped back from the console, letting the moment settle. In the tight air of the room, the tension was a living thing, felt in the way the men shifted, in the way their hands hovered over controls, but didn't move. Outside the viewport, the council ships held their orbit, distant lights in a sky that now belonged to them. Dorn let the silence linger, then broke it with a single, focused question. Status of the old mining arrays? A young systems officer looked up, surprise flashing in his eyes. Sir, the deep space rigs? Yes, Dorn said. They're still hidden? Yes, sir. The council never considered them a threat. Good, Dorn said, his tone final. We'll keep them that way. Let the council believe we're caged. He moved to the heads-up display, tracing the orbital lines with his finger. The screen's glow danced across his eyes, a stark reflection of his thoughts. Begin analysis of the council's enforcement patterns, their rotations, their launch windows, everything. We need to know exactly how they think they've locked us down. Understood, sir. The room moved again, tension shifting into controlled motion as officers relayed Dorn's order. Lines of data, intercepted transmissions, and orbital positions scrolled across the displays. Dorn didn't look away. He felt the press of Earth's air, stale and recycled in the control room, and knew that every breath was now a choice. Outside, the Council's blockade was a cold hand at the planet's throat. Inside, Earth's will was beginning to forge itself around that pressure. Commander, Halleck said softly, we don't have a clear line of command from Earth's Council anymore. They're compromised. We may be on our own. Dorn nodded. That's not a disadvantage. It means we don't have to wait for permission. For a moment, silence claimed the control room once more, the weight of Dorn's words settling into every man's mind. Then Dorn's voice broke through with calm authority. I want every orbital platform's final status report. Every station, every satellite, every rig we can still reach. We'll start from what we know. As they worked, Dorn let his eyes linger on the Council fleet in the distance. Each ship was a declaration of control. Each silent transmission from them was an assumption that Earth would yield. In that assumption, Dorn saw the one opening that Earth could use. He turned away from the viewport at last, his thoughts already pushing past the blockade's iron calm. There would be no grand announcements, no pleasantries, no false assurances. Earth would speak in the only language the Council understood, force, wielded with careful silence. And in that silence, Dorn saw Earth's future, unwritten, but no longer waiting. The door sealed behind Dorn with a solid click, the dull sound echoing off the concrete walls of the underground council room. A low murmur of voices stilled as he stepped inside. Earth's defense directors sat around a wide table, shadows gathering in the dimmed light of the recessed lamps. Maps of orbital paths and council fleet rotations flickered on a wall-mounted panel, the shifting glow revealing the lined faces of men who understood the weight of failure. Commander, Director Vorn Hallex greeted him with a nod, his tone thin with fatigue. We've gathered every sector chief who still has command lines intact. Dorn walked to the head of the table, his boots solid against the steel floor. That's enough, he said. What we decide here, tonight, will shape Earth's next century. Make no mistake about that. The council chamber smelled faintly of cold stone and stale air, the kind that seeped into every breath when weeks had passed without fresh supply lines. Dorn's gaze swept the room, the flicker of data feeds illuminating the hollow eyes of men who had watched their defensive screens collapse in real time. We're cut off, Director Saul Trenner said, his voice low. Council dreadnoughts control every approach. Mars outposts have gone dark. Civilian morale is fracturing under the blockade. And yet, Dorn said, his tone steady, our orbital mining rigs remain untouched. A stir of movement at the table. Director Voss, broad-shouldered with oil-streaked coveralls that marked him as an engineer before a politician, shifted forward. The council doesn't see them as a threat. They're industrial, nothing more. Dorn's eyes narrowed, his fingers tapping a slow rhythm on the table's cold metal surface. Exactly. They see us as locked down, helpless. That blindness is the gap we exploit. A pause. The air in the room felt thick, every breath shared and measured. Trinard's voice cracked through the silence. Project Shroud. You're suggesting we reactivate it. Dorn's head turned, meeting each director's stare and turn. Not suggest, order. Shroud was built in the mining sectors to mask mineral extraction from council taxes. It can do more. Alex shifted uneasily. We're talking about converting civilian rigs into weapons platforms. That's not a line we cross lightly. Lightly? Dorn's voice was sharp. The council is not crossing lines lightly. They've cut our trade, our alliances, our very air if they could. They believe Earth will fold without a fight. That's the line they've chosen. Boss cleared his throat, the scrape of his chair loud in the close room. The rigs can be repurposed, kinetic launchers integrated, decoy fields adapted from old mining masks. I can have prototypes in 2 days. The glow of the data feeds pulsed across his weathered features, casting long shadows across his jaw. Dorn recognized the grim determination there, the same that had pushed Earth's engineers to the brink in other crises. Good, Dorn said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Then it begins tonight. Director Rel Harn, the youngest at the table, leaned forward. His voice was quiet but certain. We risk retaliation on a scale we can't absorb, Commander. Dorn met the man's worried eyes without blinking. Retaliation only works if they see us as compliant. We give them a demonstration, one they can't ignore. We let them feel what it means to turn a mining tool into a spear. The flicker of council insignia on the far wall was turned off, leaving only Earth's crest hanging in the low light. Halleck's shoulders straightened at the sight. The Planetary Council won't approve this. They're still begging for negotiation. Dorn's mouth curved faintly. Then they'll have to catch up to the reality we live in. We're not waiting for permission. He stepped closer to the table, the edge of the cold steel pressing into his palms. This is not about heroics. It's about survival and leverage. We show them Earth won't be caged by diplomacy or threat. We'll speak in the only language they've always understood. A short silence followed, the weight of Dorn's words grounding every man in the room. Jenner shifted, his eyes dark. If we do this, there's no going back, no halfway measures. Understood, Dorn replied. This council's decision will stand as Earth's voice, spoken through every station we control. Voss reached for a datapad, fingers moving with quiet certainty. I'll need access to the old mining array schematics. We'll rewire them for kinetic capacity and integrate the decoy fields. We'll have to work in blackout. Council scans won't miss any surge in power if we're not careful. You'll have it, Dorn said. Full blackout protocols will begin within the hour. They think we're caged? Let them keep thinking it. A quiet murmur of assent, more felt than heard, moved around the table. Men who had known the quiet weight of defeat now found something new in their voices, resolve that settled deep in their chests. Dorn turned away, scanning the schematic overlays projected onto the far wall. Earth's orbital footprint, so fragile under Council blockade, now shimmered with the thin lines of possibility. In that geometry of orbits and stations, he saw Earth's chance to rewrite the balance of power. Halleck stepped up beside him, voice low. If this works, it's not just a demonstration. It's a declaration. Dorn didn't look at him, eyes fixed on the cold points of light that marked each council dreadnought. We're beyond declarations, Director. We're past speeches and polite protests. We're showing them consequence. Calculated, measured, and final. The room fell into quiet preparation. Each man at the table turned to their notes, the rustle of paper and the faint click of data access points replacing the earlier tension. Voss spoke in quiet tones to his engineers, outlining the sequence of modifications. Trenno relayed silent orders through a secure relay, his fingers drumming once on the table before sending the final authorization. Norn let the quiet work around him. He felt the weight of the air, the cold bite of recycled oxygen against the back of his throat. Outside, the Council's blockade waited in silence. Inside, Earth's answer was already taking shape. He turned back to the directors, each man's face marked by the hard lines of decision. When the Council sees what we can build in the shadows of their blockade, they'll learn the cost of underestimating Earth, Dorn said softly, his voice carrying without effort. The final click of a data node locked into place, the last confirmation of the night's plan. Dorn straightened, his breath steady as the cold light of the data feeds flickered against his features. Let's get to work. Dorn stepped onto the platform of the lunar fabrication yard, the air cold and dry against his skin. He inhaled slowly, the metallic tang of recycled oxygen filling his lungs. The cavernous space before him was alive with motion. Engineers moving with quiet efficiency, cables snaking across the deck. The dull clang of repurposed mining rigs echoing off the reinforced walls. Director Voss approached from the far end, his coveralls streaked with grease and dust. "Commander," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "The first kinetic assemblies are mounted. We're calibrating the launch vectors now." Dorn nodded, stepping closer to inspect the rig. What had once been a civilian mining tool, its framework built to carve resources from the lunar crust, now bristled with reinforced launch channels. The harsh light of work lamps glinted off the cold steel. "Show me the calibration data," Dorn ordered. Voss gestured to a nearby console. "We've integrated the targeting algorithms into the relay's core memory. Council patrol scans are disrupted by the old masking arrays. They'll see nothing but shadows." Dorn's eyes scanned the readouts, the quiet murmur of the engineers blending with the mechanical rasp of power conduits. He reached out, touching the console's surface, feeling the faint vibration of current surging through the circuits. "And the launch cycle?" Voss's voice lowered. 3 seconds to lock, 5 to discharge. "We're pushing the rig's structural limits, but the kinetic payload will cut through any Council hull." The thought settled in Dorn's mind with cold certainty. "They'll never expect it," he said softly, his breath clouding in the chill of the unheated platform. Across the yard, sparks flew as welders sealed reinforced plating around the launch tubes. The acrid bite of hot steel filled the air, mixing with the scent of oil and the faint ozone of electrical surge. Dorn watched as teams worked in shifts, their movements quick and controlled. Each rivet driven home was another step toward Earth's retribution. "Commander," Voss said, his eyes fixed on the rig's mounting bracket. "We've adapted the decoy field generators from the old mining masks. They're crude, but they'll scatter the Council's scans long enough to hide our firing solution." Dorn's expression remained impassive. "They don't need to be perfect. They only need to hold long enough for us to strike." He moved away from the rig, his boots crunching on scattered fragments of welding slag. He passed row upon row of mining vehicles, once symbols of Earth's labor, now quiet instruments of defiance. Their matte hulls gleamed in the harsh light, a silent testament to the transformation taking shape. In a side chamber, technicians worked over the decoy field emitters, the soft buzz of calibrators punctuated by the sharp snap of relays locking into place. Dorn stepped closer, feeling the static charge of the field wash over his exposed skin. The sensation prickled at the edges of his awareness, an electric whisper that spoke of risk and possibility. Director Harn joined them, his eyes hollow with fatigue. "We're finalizing the last shield harmonics. Once they're aligned, the Council scans will show nothing but empty corridors." Dorn studied the younger man's drawn features. "And the tests?" Harn's hands flexed at his sides. "We've run simulations. They're holding. We'll know for sure when we deploy live." The quiet determination in his voice settled the final doubts in Dorn's mind. "You'll have that chance," he said. He turned back to Voss. "Deploy the first rig to the asteroid belt relay. Council patrols are thinner there. If the field holds, we'll move the others into place." Voss's eyes met Dorn's, the flicker of understanding there, as clear as any spoken word. "We'll be ready." Dorn's fingers tapped the cold railing, the faint scrape of metal on skin grounding him in the moment. He felt the weight of the Council's blockade, the constant threat that hung over every breath. Yet here, in the careful rhythm of hammer blows and the low murmur of status checks, he sensed the heartbeat of something new, something unstoppable. "Director Voss," Dorn said, voice low, When the Council sees these rigs for what they are, they'll understand that Earth's silence was never submission, it was preparation. Voss gave a single nod, then turned back to his team. Double-check the launch vector alignments. No variance. We're not here to impress. We're here to end their illusions. Dorn moved through the rest of the yard, the stale air catching the faint tang of cut-wire insulation and the bite of machine oil. In a corner, an engineer fitted control modules into a modified mining rig's housing, his fingers working quickly despite the cold that had settled into the concrete floor. Dorn paused, watching the man's quiet focus, and felt the rise of something deep in his chest, a pulse of determination that matched the steady rhythm of the work around him. Outside the reinforced viewport, Earth's battered orbital lanes lay beyond the thin atmosphere. Council ships drifted in cold silence, their command protocols unbroken by Earth's hidden movements. Dorn's mind mapped each patrol's interval, each rotation, that could be exploited by the rigs now being readied in secret. "Commander," Harn said, joining him at the viewport. "We're almost there. The final power coupling is being aligned. Once it's done, we'll have full control." Dorn's eyes never left the drifting shapes of the Council fleet. "Once it's done," he said quietly, "Earth won't have to ask for its place. We'll take it." The quiet work of the engineers continued around them, each man's focus absolute. The room smelled of hot metal and ozone, each breath sharp in the recycled air. The flicker of welding torches reflected in the viewport glass, casting brief flashes of white light across Dorn's features. "Status of the asteroid relay?" he asked without turning. Voss's voice came through the comm unit at his belt. "Rig is in final approach. Council sensors haven't registered a thing." Dorn let a slow breath leave him, the cold air biting at the back of his throat. "Good. Keep the other rigs on blackout until we confirm field stability." He turned away from the viewport, the thin film of frost on the glass glinting under the flickering overheads. Around him, Earth's defense was being rebuilt, in the quiet labor of men who would not accept defeat. "Director Voss," he said into the comm. "Once the relay confirms the field, move to Phase 2. I want every rig positioned before the Council even knows we're moving." Voss's reply was crisp, the edge of certainty in his words matching the cold logic of Dorn's own thoughts. "Understood. We're in motion, Commander." Dorn closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the quiet thrum of the yard beneath his boots. The Council had cut Earth off, convinced it had ended any chance of resistance. They had forgotten that Earth's true strength had never been in treaties or alliances. It was here, in the quiet work of men who had turned mining rigs into weapons, in the determination etched into every line of their faces, in the cold finality of a plan forged not in desperation, but in defiance. He opened his eyes, the shadows of the yard flickering across the steel walls, and knew that the Shroud had awakened. The Council would learn that Earth's silence had never been submission. It had been the calm before the strike. The Lunar Yard's control center was silent as the final data feed locked in. Dorn stood at the main console, fingers hovering over the encrypted input. Around him, the faint creak of cooling metal and the low murmur of status updates filled the air. The room smelled of old steel and sweat, the tang of recycled air biting at the back of his throat. "Rig 1 reports final targeting," Director Voss said, his voice steady. "Trajectory aligned with Council Dreadnought flagship. Impact window confirmed." Dorn's gaze shifted to the tactical map, each marker a testament to the Council's assumption of Earth's compliance. The flagship loomed above the equatorial dockyards, its gun ports idle, sensors sweeping in calculated arcs. Dorn's eyes narrowed, every movement deliberate. "Patch me through to the relay," he said, his voice stripped of any inflection. A quiet click as the comm line opened. "Relay command," came the comm report from the asteroid belt. "Payload's locked, waiting on your order." Dorn inhaled slowly, the filtered air dry against his tongue. "Launch on my mark. Show them what Earth can build in silence." The relay officer didn't hesitate. "Understood, sir." Dorn's hand moved, each finger steady as he entered the launch command, The console's tactile keys clicked in a rhythm that matched the quiet, heavy pulse of his heart. Mark. A deep shudder rolled through the mining rig's repurposed structure as the kinetic projectile launched, the sudden shift of mass barely contained by the rig's reinforced bracing. Dorn watched the telemetry stream, numbers scrolling in tight columns, each second carrying the payload closer to the Council flagship. The observation team's eyes tracked the silent arc of the projectile. No one spoke. The only sounds were the soft clicks of tracking systems adjusting, the muted exhale of men who understood what this moment meant. Telemetry clear, Voss said, his tone even. Impact. In 5. The rig strike vector cut through the Council's orbital formation with the finality of a sharpened blade. Dorn watched the projection line bisect the flagship's icon, the impact point flashing once before the sensors cut to black. On the main screen, the flagship's outline shifted, then fractured, a ripple of movement as the kinetic impact tore through armor, bulkheads, and the lines of command that had held Earth in silence. The dreadnought's lights flickered, then went dark, the final collapse of the projection captured in a single moment of quiet finality. Impact confirmed, the relay officer reported. Council flagship neutralized. Dorn let the words settle in the room. Around him, the engineers and directors stood still, their breathing shallow as the significance of the strike took hold. The smell of warm circuits filled the air as power levels shifted across the control consoles, systems recalibrating to the new balance of power. Status of Council transmissions? Dorn asked, his voice calm. Silent, Hallex replied, his fingers flying over the console. They're holding position, no movement, no response. Dorn's jaw shifted as he studied the data. The Council's formation, once an iron cordon, now trembled around the breach left by the destroyed flagship. They thought compliance was the only option. Let them see what happens when Earth refuses. Voss looked up from his console, the faint sheen of sweat on his brow catching the flickering overheads. We've got Council patrols adjusting vector formations. They're hesitant is the opening we need, Dorn said. Maintain blackout protocols, no further launches unless I give the order. Let them consider what else we might be hiding. He stepped away from the console, boots striking the cold floor in a measured rhythm. His hand tightened on the rail as he looked out through the viewport at Earth's battered orbit. The Council's ships still circled, but now they held back. No advance. No confident assertions. In the sudden stillness, Dorn felt the shift of power, like the first breath after being held underwater. Open a secure channel to Council command, he ordered. His voice was level, each word a blade honed on the quiet edge of Earth's refusal. Hallex keyed the encryption, his fingers moving with the certainty of a man who had spent a lifetime in the shadow of interstellar diplomacy. Channel secured, he said. They're waiting. Dorn leaned into the console, his breath steady. The line crackled once before resolving into the cold, measured voice of Council envoy Vern Rask. Earth, Rask said, each syllable clipped. You've crossed a line. Lines exist to be challenged, Dorn replied, his tone even. You've pushed Earth to the edge. We've shown you how we answer. A brief silence stretched across the channel. The Council's confidence fractured like the hull of the ship Dorn had just torn from orbit. Your demonstration will have consequences, Rask said, but the weight behind his words had shifted. No longer an assertion, but an echo of uncertainty. Dorn didn't smile, though the corner of his mouth tightened. We're aware. Let this be the only demonstration you need. He cut the channel with a deliberate motion, the finality of the disconnection as clean as the impact that had shattered the Council's flagship. Around him, the room was quiet. No cheers, no release of tension, only the controlled breathing of men who understood that the work was far from finished. Director Voss, Dorn said, turning to the engineer. Run full diagnostic on the rig's firing system. I want it back online within the hour. Voss nodded once, his expression resolute. We'll make it ready, Commander. Dorn shifted his gaze to the data feeds, each Council ship now a wary sentinel in the cold silence of Earth's orbit. The shift was complete. Earth had spoken, once, decisively, and that was enough. As the last flickers of the shattered flagship's data stream faded from the console, Dorn let his breath settle into a measured cadence. Around him, the quiet work of recalibration began again, the engineers moving with renewed focus. The Council had come to Earth's skies to force submission. They had found something else entirely. A silence that carried the weight of finality. Dorn stood in the center of it all, his hands resting on the console, his voice the only sound that mattered. "Earth will not beg," he said softly to the men around him and the cold, watchful council beyond. "We will not yield." Dorn walked into the relay station's negotiation chamber with measured steps. The floor beneath his boots was polished stone, cold to the touch, a quiet reminder that this was neutral ground. No flags, no emblems, only the weight of consequence in every breath. The door behind him sealed with a low click, the final threshold between Earth's hidden defiance and the Council's veiled demands. Envoy Vern Rask stood waiting near the central table, his uniform crisp, the Council's seal conspicuously absent from his shoulder patch. He watched Dorn approach with the faint curl of a diplomat's practiced smile. "Commander Dorn," he said, the words clipped and even. "You've chosen a hard road." Dorn didn't pause. "We chose a road that wasn't yours to pave," he replied. His eyes met Rask's, unblinking, reading the flicker of calculation there. "Let's begin." Rask gestured to the chair across from him, the motion as smooth as a blade's edge. "We're here to restore dialogue, nothing more." His voice was calm, each syllable coated in a polite emptiness that had brokered 1,000 minor treaties. Dorn remained standing. "Dialogue assumes parity," Dorn said. "Until now, Earth has had none. That changes today." Rask's eyes narrowed a fraction, the faint rustle of his coat's fabric filling the pause. "Your demonstration was noted," he said, voice as smooth as polished stone. "But Earth remains a single world. Our mandate governs many." Dorn leaned forward, his hands resting on the table's edge. "Your mandate ends at Earth's orbit. Your dreadnought lies scattered over our skies. Proof enough of what we can build in the dark." The chamber was lit by a single overhead fixture, its glow stark against the cold lines of the walls. Rask's gaze flicked across Dorn's face, searching for cracks, but found only the steady calm of a man who had planned each word long before speaking. "Commander," Rask said, the faint shift of his weight on the floor the only betrayal of unease. "You know the Council's reach. Retaliation is not a threat. It's an outcome." Dorn's tone didn't change. "Outcome requires certainty. What you saw was only the beginning. Project Shroud is not a singular strike. It's a doctrine, one you can't afford to test." The air in the room was still, each man's breath audible in the quiet. The faint smell of recirculated air carried a sterility that matched the empty formality of the chamber. Rask's fingers drummed once against the table, a small, restless gesture that stopped as quickly as it began. "Earth wants independence," Rask said. "But independence can be isolation. Trade, technology, protection, these are not guarantees if you stand alone." Dorn's eyes didn't waver. "Then we stand alone. Better to be isolated than compliant." Rath's lips tightened. "You believe Earth can endure that isolation? That your people will accept the cost of defiance?" Dorn's voice dropped, each word deliberate. "What they will not accept is submission." A brief silence stretched, the muted echo of distant ventilation systems the only interruption. Rask shifted, his suit's fabric brushing the back of his chair as he adjusted his posture. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. Dorn's tone was clear. Full economic autonomy. No council levies. No patrol oversight within Earth's sphere. We dictate our trade, our alliances, our future. Rask's brow furrowed. "That's a bold claim for a planet recently blockaded. And yet here we are," Dorn replied. "Your blockade was built on the belief that Earth would fold. We didn't. We adapted. We built weapons you never saw coming." Rask's eyes flickered, a subtle crack in his polished facade. And if the Council refuses? Dorn's reply was quiet, almost conversational. Then you can explain to your superiors why Earth's silence was never a surrender, why your fleets hesitate now, unsure of what else waits in our skies. The chamber's lights seemed to burn a fraction brighter, their cold glow stark against the matte walls. Rask's jaw shifted, the faint scrape of his teeth audible in the pause. Earth's position, he said, voice thin, will be considered. Dorn leaned back, his stance relaxed but unyielding. Consider carefully, because we won't negotiate from weakness. Earth will not be held hostage by your council's threats. A faint beep from Rask's comm device cut through the stillness, a coded pulse of data that spoke of messages waiting beyond this room. He ignored it, his focus locked on Dorn's steady gaze. You're inviting a cycle of escalation, he said. One strike becomes many. Dorn's eyes were calm. One strike was enough. It showed you that Earth will not be dictated to. That's the message. We don't intend to repeat it, but we're prepared to. The envoy's shoulders shifted, a small motion that carried the weight of his role. You're willing to risk everything for autonomy. Dorn's answer was simple. We're not risking it. We're claiming it. A quiet pause settled, the weight of unspoken consequences in the air. The smell of cold, recycled air mixed with the faint tang of heated electronics, a sterile reminder of the life support systems that kept the relay station habitable. Rask's gaze dropped for a moment, his hand flexing once against the table's edge. Very well, he said at last. I'll relay your terms to the Council. They won't accept them lightly. Dorn nodded, the faintest tilt of his head. Then they'll accept them, knowing the alternative. Rask rose, the chair's legs scraping softly against the stone floor. This negotiation will not be easy, he said, his voice stripped of any false calm. It isn't supposed to be, Dorn replied. The envoy stepped away from the table, his footsteps quiet in the confined chamber. As he paused at the doorway, he glanced back, the faint glimmer of unease in his eyes. You forced the Council to consider Earth in a way they never have before. That was always the point, Dorn said. The door closed behind Rask with a final click, the sound echoing in the quiet chamber. Dorn stood alone, the cold light above him catching the edges of the table, casting long shadows that stretched across the floor. He let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of every word that had passed between them. Around him, the silence was not the hush of defeat, but the measured quiet of consequence. Earth's terms were spoken. The Council would hear them, and in that hearing, they would understand the truth Dorn had carved into the cold of space. Earth's future was no longer up for negotiation. It was a fact, one that had been earned in the darkness and silence of the blockade, forged in the hidden labor of men who would not yield. The Council's high chamber was sealed against external signals, the walls lined with layered shielding that cut every transmission to nothing. In the center, the councilor sat in a tight circle around a table of dark composite, the lights overhead cold and clinical. The air smelled of old dust and the faint tang of sterilizing agents, a sterile contrast to the tension in the room. Councilor Vec Trenner leaned forward, his knuckles pressing against the hard surface of the table. You've all seen the data, he said, his tone clipped. One strike, clean and final. Earth's kinetic deployment was not improvised, it was doctrine. Across from him, Councilor Roll Kern's brow furrowed. One strike does not prove a doctrine, he said, voice flat. It could be an isolated demonstration, an engineered illusion. Trenner's eyes flicked to the redacted feed projected on the wall behind Kern. Black bars cut through the data streams, Council sensors blinded in the critical moments of Earth's launch. Illusion. Trenner's voice dropped. The flagship is gone, Kern, reduced to wreckage in Earth's sky. A low cough from Councilor Fendras broke the pause. We're arguing definitions, Dras said. What matters is the consequence. Earth has forced us to weigh retaliation against risk. Our mandate was never built for direct engagement. On a side table, an aide shuffled data slates, the scrape of plastic against the stone floor the only other sound. "Intercepted Earth communications," he said, his voice neutral. No signs of negotiation breakdown. Earth's message was simple: parity or nothing. Counselor Rel Jaros rubbed his eyes, the lines of exhaustion clear on his face. "We always believed Earth's strength was bound by treaties. Controlled, contained." His tone shifted, resignation creeping in. "What we see now is different." Trenner's fingers drummed once against the table, then stopped. Different is the threat. Different means we can no longer predict their response. Ern's shoulders squared, his breath short. "We control 12 systems. Earth is one planet. One victory does not rewrite the hierarchy." Drass's reply was quiet, but every word carried the weight of consequence. One victory is enough to make us consider our own vulnerability. If Earth can build this in secret, what else waits behind their silence? Silence settled over the chamber, broken only by the faint crackle of the environmental systems pushing stale air through the filters. Jaros's hand tightened around the arm of his chair. "We must consider the risk of escalation," he said, each word deliberate. "Every fleet we send to Earth's orbit ties our resources there. Every demand we make without leverage exposes our own weaknesses." On the far wall, a projection of Earth's orbital lanes shimmered, council ships holding their positions, each icon a question without an answer. Trenner studied the display, his jaw tight. "We planned for compliance, not for retaliation." An aide shifted beside him, his fingers scrolling through intercepted chatter. "Counselor," he said, "our analysts confirmed Dorn's doctrine was not theoretical. They have logistical support, field-tested targeting systems. This was not an isolated stunt." Drass leaned back, his breath slow. "If Earth has proven its capability, then they've also proven our exposure. Every system under our mandate will be watching. Some will see an example, not an outlier." Kern's eyes narrowed, frustration evident in the small crease between his brows. "We cannot show hesitation. To yield to Earth's terms would be to concede the Council's authority." Trenner's gaze was cold. "And to push forward without certainty would be to risk showing the Council's weakness. Earth has given us no clear path forward, only the knowledge that our reach is not as secure as we believed." The chamber smelled faintly of ozone from the old air scrubbers, the scent mixing with the sharper tang of sweat on counselors' collars. Each man felt the cold press of the table under his hands, the smooth surface unyielding in the face of their unease. "Counselor Jaros," Kern said, his voice low, "you have experience with these negotiations. What would you advise?" Jaros's fingers traced a shallow groove in the table, the motion grounding him in the swirl of half-spoken fears. "I'd advise caution," he said. "Not fear, caution. Earth has forced us to see that not every world will yield to the same pressure. Retaliation without assurance is suicide." Drass's eyes flicked to Trenera, then back to Jaros. "Then we de-escalate," he said. "We maintain patrols, but we do not push. Earth's terms, harsh as they are, may be the only path that preserves the Council's stability." Kern's jaw worked, his lips pressed thin. "If we agree to Earth's terms, we're setting a precedent. Other colonies may follow." Trenner met his gaze, the weight of leadership in every measured word. "Or we show that Earth's strength was not an anomaly, but a warning, one we will not force to repeat itself." An aide stepped forward, his breath quick in the recycled air. "Counselor, final intelligence analysis. Earth's deployments remain hidden. We can't project their true capabilities. Any engagement would be blind." The chamber fell quiet, the decision hanging unspoken in the stale air. Kern looked down at the table, his eyes tracing the faint scratches in its surface. "Then it seems," he said, his voice stripped of conviction, "that Earth has forced our hand." Trenner nodded once, the faint lines around his mouth deepening. "We'll draft a formal response. Recognition of Earth's parity, controlled re-entry into Council trade, No further embargoes, without unanimous consent. Grass exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing by a fraction. Let the others see it as balance. Earth has not broken the council, they've forced it to bend. Kern didn't speak, his silence a final, grudging admission. Around him the aides shifted to relay the orders, their movements careful in the small chamber's confines. As the final decisions were spoken aloud, Jaros closed his eyes for a moment, the faint scent of cold air mixing with the quiet certainty of Earth's demonstration. In that silence, he understood what Dorn had known from the beginning. Fear was not in the Council's arsenal alone. Earth had taught them that fear could be a weapon when wielded in silence. When the chamber finally emptied, each counselor left with the knowledge that Earth's silence was not defeat. It was a line drawn in the cold of orbit, a line they would not dare cross again. From the observation deck of Earth's primary orbital command, Dorn watched as the last Council dreadnought shifted its vector, thrusters firing in brief, controlled bursts. The ship's profile turned, its cold hull marked by the Council's insignia, retreating along a calculated arc that would take it to the outer patrol lanes. The steady movement spoke of measured disengagement. No haste, no defiance, only the quiet acknowledgement that Earth would no longer be held in orbit's shadow. The room behind Dorn was quiet, the muted scrape of boot soles against the floor, the soft tap of data entries as officers monitored the Council fleet's departure. Each sound a note of relief wrapped in caution. The air carried the scent of cold steel and recycled filters, the faint tang of machinery that never truly slept. Director Voss joined him at the viewport, the lines of fatigue on his face softened by the weight of the moment. "They're pulling back," he said, his voice low. "Not a single ship left within our orbital lanes." Dorn didn't turn his head. "They're not gone," he replied. "They're watching from a distance, waiting to see if Earth reverts to what it was, compliant, silent." Voss's fingers drummed once against the edge of the viewport. "They'll find a different Earth waiting for them." Beyond the glass, Earth's orbital stations flickered back to life, their control arrays warming under the first autonomous commands in weeks. Crews moved along exterior catwalks, safety lines anchored to guide rails, their suits a patchwork of repairs and defiance. Each motion was deliberate, a quiet testament to what had been taken and reclaimed. In the communications center, Director Hallex worked over a console, voice steady as he relayed trade resumption protocols to the scattered cargo haulers waiting on Earth's fringes. "First convoy from Ceres reports clearance," he said, his voice carrying a calm certainty. "They're moving in under Earth's manifest, no Council inspection codes required." Dorn nodded once, the motion small but final. "Good. Let the trade lanes open. But every vessel is to be scanned, every transaction verified. We hold the authority now. No illusions." Hallex paused, the flicker of hesitation gone as he absorbed the words. "Understood, Commander. We'll handle it." Earth's sky was streaked with the faint glow of reactivated beacons, navigational pulses flickering in the low-orbit night. Dorn's eyes tracked the small freighters, drifting closer, each one a lifeline that had been cut, now cautiously restored. The relief was there, but it was measured. Every gain shadowed by the knowledge of what still waited beyond the horizon. In a side bay, cargo handlers moved crates of supplies with deliberate care, the soft clack of magnetic clamps echoing in the confined air. The scent of oil and faint dust rose from the storage holds, mingling with the cold breath of the air recyclers. Each crate stacked was another thread in the quiet tapestry of Earth's return to normalcy. Director Harn approached, a datapad held tight in his gloved hands. "Commander," he said, his tone even. "Outer colonies confirm re-establishment of supply lines. No Council oversight on their end, only Earth's manifest." Dorn took the pad, scanning the lines of data. "That's how it will remain," he said. "We control the flow. We control the terms." Harn's gaze was steady, the faint flicker of relief in his eyes quickly buried under the hard lines of duty. "And Project Shroud?" he asked, the words careful. Dorn's reply was immediate. It remains active, hidden but active. We will not advertise it, but we will never dismantle it. The quiet scrape of a chair against the command deck floor drew his attention. Voss had taken a seat at one of the secondary consoles, his posture relaxed but watchful. The Council will adapt to this, he said. They'll wait, measure, look for weakness. They'll find none, Dorn replied. His voice was a calm weight in the room. We've shown them that Earth's silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. Let them see what else we can prepare. Beyond the viewport, the last of the Council warships slipped past the orbital markers, its cold lines fading into the darkness between the planets. Dorn watched until the ship was only a memory against the backdrop of stars. Halleck's voice came over the room's comm channel, measured and certain. All trade lanes green. First civilian transports have permission to dock. Earth's skies are clear. Dorn let the words settle, the faint echo of them in the room a soft punctuation. Then we move forward, he said, quietly, carefully, but always forward. The air felt different now, not free, never that, but open in a way that hadn't existed since the Council's shadow fell over Earth's orbit. The cold tang of recycled air carried a hint of relief, the tension in every man's shoulders eased by the knowledge that the blockade was over, if only in name. Dorn's hand rested against the console, his fingers cool on the hardened surface. No celebration, he said softly, the words not a command but an understanding. Not yet. We've won a moment, nothing more. Voss stood, his voice steady. That moment was earned, Commander. Let's not waste it. The command deck shifted back into motion, data feeds updated in steady streams, each line a quiet record of Earth's pulse as it settled back into a rhythm of autonomy. Dorn watched them, his mind already turning to the future, the choices that would shape Earth's place in the Council's uneasy balance. In the final quiet of the deck, he allowed himself a single breath of satisfaction, the cold air filling his lungs. The Council had withdrawn, but Earth's resolve remained, woven into every relay, every orbital platform, every man who had held that line in the silence of blockade. As the data feeds flickered in the low light, Dorn turned away from the viewport. We have the opening, he said to the men around him, each word deliberate. We hold it. Now, we build something they cannot take from us. The Council had learned that Earth would not bow. Now it would learn what Earth could build when it stood alone. Dorn stood in the Council chamber, the soft light of overhead fixtures reflecting on the seal newly affixed to the central table. The room felt different, the air carrying the clean scent of polished stone and recycled air scrubbers working in quiet cycles. Around the table, Earth's defense directors sat straight-backed, their uniforms marked by weeks of silent endurance now given voice. Director Voss watched the final document come to rest in the center of the table, the Council's seal of acknowledgement set beside Earth's own. It's done, he said, voice low. They've recognized us on equal footing. Dorn studied the treaty, his fingertips resting lightly on its edge. Recognition is one thing, he said, measured calm in his tone. Respect is another. We've shown them that Earth's silence was never absence. It was resolve. Alex leaned forward, scanning the last line of the document. No future embargo without Earth's explicit agreement, he read, the words almost foreign after years of dictated terms. We hold the veto. The Council can't strip it away. Dorn's eyes lifted, meeting each man's gaze in turn. That veto is the final line we draw, and it will remain as long as we stand ready to prove we can enforce it. Beyond the Council chamber's reinforced window, the orbital network stretched across Earth's sky, station after station, powered and waiting. Their lights flickered in steady patterns, the first sign of Earth's silent commitment, made real in cold metal and careful engineering. Director Harn cleared his throat, his breath catching in the cold of the chamber. Project Shroud? It stays? Dorn nodded once, the motion firm. It stays. We keep it hidden. We keep it ready. We showed the Council what Earth could build in the shadows. Let them remember that, every time they look at this world. Voss shifted in his seat, the leather creaking softly under his weight. They won't test us again, not soon. They'll test themselves, Dorn replied. Every decision they make from now on will carry the weight of what we showed them. Outside the viewport, Earth's orbital relay glowed a muted red, trade vessels drifting along designated lanes. Each freighter, each satellite, each station bore the quiet authority of a world that had found its voice. Dorn watched the slow, deliberate movements, the rotation of cargo tethers, and the silent flicker of station status lights. They'll watch for weakness, Halleck said, his voice careful. They'll wait for the first crack in our resolve. Let them, Dorn said, the finality of his tone silencing the room. Earth has lived under their gaze for too long. Now they live under ours. The chamber doors opened to the final delegation, council envoys stepping in under the scrutiny of Earth's quiet watch. Their movements were measured, the subtle stiffness of men who understood they were no longer the only arbiters of power. The lead envoy inclined his head, the motion respectful, without warmth. The council recognizes Earth's autonomy, he said, each word spoken with the clarity of a final order. Your veto stands, Commander Dorn, as does your seat at the table. Dorn gave a single nod, no triumph in the motion, only the final acceptance of a battle concluded. We'll use that seat, he said. But understand this. Earth's place is not granted by your signatures. It's built by our own hands. The envoy's gaze wavered a fraction, then steadied. The council will honor the terms. Your world has earned that respect. As the envoys turned to leave, the scent of clean, ionized air filled the chamber. A subtle shift from the stale weight of blockade and subjugation. Dorn let the moment settle, each breath a quiet claim to the sovereignty Earth had wrested from the council's grasp. He left the chamber with Voss and Hallex close behind, the corridor's bright lights harsh against the darker wood of the door they closed behind them. The quiet murmur of data analysts echoed down the hall, trade routes re-established, supply lines moving again under Earth's authority. At the orbital command center, Dorn paused at the main display. The final update showed the Council's fleet pulled back to the edges of Earth's system, their presence reduced to observation, no longer occupation. Earth stations, once blacked out and silent, now pulsed with quiet purpose, each one a testament to Earth's unspoken promise, never again to bow, never again to be cut off without reply. Boss stood at his side, watching the feed cycle through station status reports. It's a new balance, he said, his voice a low rumble in the cold, filtered air. One we shaped. Mostly done, we'll hold, Dorn answered. His gaze tracked the quiet orbit of a repurposed mining rig, its once mundane bulk now part of Earth's permanent defense grid. Its lights glowed a soft amber in the station's protective shadow, a reminder of what Earth had built when no one believed it could. In a final meeting with his defense directors, Dorn's voice carried the weight of final orders. We keep the Shroud active, we let no one see its depths, we trust no foreign promise without proof. Earth stands alone, because Earth stands ready. The words settled like iron in the quiet of the room, each man nodding once in silent agreement. The faint crackle of radio updates from the orbital outposts formed the only background sound, the cold air tasting faintly of ionized dust from the recycled scrubbers. Alex cleared his throat once. And if they try again? If the Council comes back to test us? Dorn's eyes never left the projection of Earth's sky. Then they'll learn again what Earth is willing to become to remain free. The final orders issued, Dorn walked the length of the command deck, the steel floor cold under his boots. He paused by the viewport, the glow of Earth's night hemisphere a quiet curve against the dark. Trade lights flickered across the continents, a moving constellation that spoke of lives carried forward, of a world no longer willing to let others speak for it. He let out a slow breath, the cold air filling his lungs. The Council had tried to cut Earth away from everything it knew, to sever its voice from the Council of Worlds. Earth had answered not with words, but with the weight of what it could build, what it could hide, what it could become in the quiet that followed betrayal. In that silence, Dorn saw the final shape of Earth's answer, a future not asked for but taken, a quiet, undeniable presence in the sky, a promise that Earth would never again be the silent partner in someone else's dominion. The Shroud waited in orbit, its lines hidden by the careful blindness of those who thought they still controlled Earth's fate. And Earth waited too, the cold certainty of its final promise written in the lights of its stations and the calm, unyielding resolve of its leaders. The Council had demanded Earth's compliance. Earth had given them something else, an answer that would never be taken away. What would you have done if you were Earth, forced to choose between silence and survival? Like this video, subscribe for more stories of human defiance, and leave your thoughts in the comments.